Petra told Mrs. Truck that Calder had needed the bathroom and had gone back up. As they walked toward the stairs, Petra asked if they could return in the middle of the morning. I'm afraid I won't be free again until tomorrow, the principal smiled kindly as she locked the heavy metal door. Think you can wait? Sure, Petra said, her mind racing. No problem. As soon as she got to the classroom, Petra told Miss Hussey that Calder had a morning dentist appointment and slipped into her seat. She tried, but it was just impossible to pay attention. In class, she excused herself to go to the bathroom more than once, tore down to the basement door each time, and knocked softly. There was no sound from inside. Calder stayed crouched for what felt like hours. This was the darkest dark he had ever been in. The basement didn't seem to have any windows. At one point, he heard a scurrying sound. He knew that Gracie Hall, like most old buildings in Hyde Park, had mice, and there were also those hissing cockroaches that had disappeared down a vent. He stood up, holding the painting carefully. He took 2 steps, then 2 more. What if there was some monster living in this basement? Someone who had snuck in when the janitor wasn't looking. Humming tunelessly, he felt his way up the stairs. When he got to the landing, he tried the door to the first floor. The handle turned, but the door was bolted. He crept back down, trying not to touch the walls. Better to stay out of sight. Maybe, if he was lucky, someone would come down to get pencils and leave the door open long enough for him to slip out. Here's a picture. He reminded himself that he was probably holding one of the greatest treasures of the art world. What were a few hours of his life next to all the adventures the lady must have been through in her 300-some years? Besides, now he and Petra would be famous. They'd be interviewed on TV. They'd be in the Chicago Tribune. Groping his way along, he found a chair and sat down slowly. He'd better stop daydreaming. A number of things had to happen before the painting was safe, if it was the painting. To occupy himself, he worked on some puzzles in his head. First, he made 3 different 12-piecers. Then he tried writing to Tommy, but without the code, it was tough. Soon, Calder felt himself wanting to doze. It was so quiet and so dark. Petra hurried down to the lower school office at lunchtime. Mrs. Truck isn't here, dear. She's gone for the rest of the day. The secretary looked irritated. Petra felt a rush of determination. The basement. My friend Calder and I need to finish an assignment by today. Is there someone who could let me in? We don't allow kids down there alone. You know that. Mrs. Truck said it was fine for us to finish our research, though, Petra lied. She said she'd make an exception. Please. Plus, we're 6th graders. The secretary looked at Petra and sighed. All right, just let me get my lunch. While the secretary was gone, Petra looked carefully at the top of her desk. Maybe the keys were inside the drawer. If she found them, should she race down and let Calder out? If the secretary came with her, she'd discover Calder had been there all morning. It'd be better to get blamed for taking the keys. She stepped quickly over to the desk, jerked open the drawer, and found, sure enough, the fat ring of master keys. Stuffing them into her pants pocket, she headed toward to the basement entrance as fast as she could go without looking conspicuous. She waited outside the basement door, proceeding to use the payphone until there was no one in either directions. Her hands were fumbly and damp. First one key. No. Then another. No. Someone was coming. Petra picked up the phone again, her heart pounding wildly. She felt sure the person walking by would hear it, but they didn't stop. The third key turned easily. Pulling open the basement door, she clicked on the switch and slipped inside. Calder! Calder, she whispered at the foot of the stairs. There was no answer. It was too quiet. Couldn't he hear her? As her eyes adjusted to the dark, she made out a small figure slumped in a chair. The package was still held tightly in his arm. Her first thought was that he died of fright. She hurried over and gave him a prod. He popped right up. Geesh, Petra, I ought to get 10 pounds of blue ones for being down here all this time. I'm glad you're all right, but hurry up, Calder. I had to steal the keys. Hurry. They were up the stairs, peeking out the door, and in the front hall in seconds. They clicked the basement door shut behind them. Petra grabbed a jacket from the lost and found box in the lobby and covered the package with it just as the secretary came around the corner carrying her lunch. Well, hello, you two. I'll be right back to let you in. It won't take long, will it? Silent, both shook their heads. As soon as she headed off toward the office, Petra looked at Calder in panic. Now what? What do we do about our keys? Leave them in the door to the basement. She'll think Mrs. Truck left them there. Petra and Calder were too nervous to talk on the walk home from school. They raced up Calder's front steps and straight to his room. Both struggled with the zipper on Calder's backpack. In the rush at school, he had pulled it closed on the fabric. Stupid thing. Calder grabbed scissors from his desk and cut open the backpack. They pulled off the tape wrapped around and around the brown paper bag. The edges of a dark wooden frame emerged, and then an old backing. They turned it over. Someone with an eager, pear-shaped head in a green bun sat writing at a table. Her one visible ear was graced with what looked like a dangling ping-pong ball. There was an orange moon behind her and a melting castle. The paint might have been done by a second grader who was now a grandparent. It was not the lady they'd been looking for.